What do you do with Boba Fett? If you own Star Wars, it's kind of an important question. He started out as a bit character working for the Empire and then was unceremoniously killed accidentally, yet he inexplicably became one of the most popular characters in Star Wars, mostly off the back of his flashy and dynamic design. The prequels gave him a backstory, being the clone of Jango Fett, a Mandalorian, but that doesn't really deepen his character. All we really know about him is that he's a professional killer who respects other bounty hunters and looks out for himself, presumably.
What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me.
Kind of one-dimensional, but seeing as it's possible he survived falling into the Sarlacc, there's potential for making a cool character out of this foundation. So Disney bought Star Wars and wants to continue the universe, and people want to see Boba Fett. What kind of story do you tell about him? How do you make this cool character design into an actual character? The Book of Boba Fett, or Mandalorian 2.5, is the third season of Star Wars television to release on Disney+. It tells the story of Boba Fett before and after his appearance in Mandalorian 2. See, Boba shows up in someone else's show, making a grand over-the-top return, but he doesn't seem like the same character at all. He's got a big stick and apparently he saved another character's life. He comes to get his armor back and then he just sticks around to help save Baby Yoda. Then at the end he storms Jabba's palace, kills Jabba's successor, and decides to take over as the new leader of Tatooine. What? Why is Boba Fett like this? Why does he want to take over from Jabba the Hutt? Okay, I guess we're doing a show where Fett's a crime boss? Sure. Boom. All right. Okay. I wasn't super excited for this show. I had a lot of questions that were lingering, but no promise of any solid answers. I expected this show to just be Boba Fett running around dealing with local businesses that don't want to give him money, and then he shoots the whole place up because, I'm Boba Fett, I'm cool. But I'm pleasantly surprised to say that that's not what the Book of Boba Fett is. It's a weird, non-chronological character arc. It's also season 3 of The Mandalorian. Non-chronological stories are really fun to pick apart. I like watching them because you get to sit and think afterwards and rearrange everything in your head. So let's do that and figure out what the hell this show is even about. I don't really care about the quality of the thing or if it's good. I'll let other people talk about that. Let's just unpack Boba Fett chronologically. Part 1, Boba Fett, the Tuscan Raider. The first thing we see in the show is Patton Oswalt's Parks and Rec pitch.
Hand down from the twin sons of Tatooine after a beat, the gloved Mandalorian armor gauntlet of Boba Fett grabs onto the sand outside the Sarlacc pit, and the feared bounty hunter pulls himself from the maw.
Boba Fett escapes the Sarlacc pit and is stripped from his armor by a bunch of Jawas. He is then taken prisoner by a tribe of Tuscan raiders who make him a slave. The first step to giving him an arc is to strip his identity as a bounty hunter away from him, literally, so we can look at who this person under the armor is. It's simple stuff, but it's probably the correct way to start this process. He gets beaten up by children for a bit while the leader of the clan looks on, drinking weird sandy nut milk. Putting the main character in a vulnerable situation makes us naturally root for them. In the middle of the night, he manages to escape his bindings and knocks out a spiky puppy. But notably, he hesitates before hitting the little kid that catches him. Despite all of his years professionally killing people, he seems to draw a line at harming children. But he gets caught and beat up by this one guy in particular who's really good with a stick. Boba tries to whack him, but it seems that all of his skills don't apply in this situation. One of the kids takes him out to go find some sandy nut milk. They hide from a biker gang and wait for them to pass, and Boba takes notice that this is a group of people that the Tuscans are afraid of, or at least are in danger from. Boba Fett's biding his time waiting for an opportunity to get out of captivity when a big Goro pops up. Boba Fett ends up saving the little Tuscan kid for initially unclear reasons. He really needed to kill it, but he ends up walking back to the camp with the child, even though he's no longer chained. Why does he do this? Is it because he wanted to save the kid? Or perhaps does he now have nowhere else to go and wouldn't really survive elsewhere? Either way, the camp hears about Boba's valiant victory over the beast and is rewarded with some sandy nut milk. There has been less than 10 lines of dialogue so far. That's really cool. In fact, Boba Fett has kind of been accepted into the clan, and the guy who beat him up earlier starts teaching him how to use this gaffy stick. The teacher is very punishing with him and even slaps him in the head. Boba's like, "Do you know who I am?" Unlike all the guns and rockets that Boba Fett's used to dealing with, wielding this weapon is a tight and meticulous method, one that's really hard to master. But Boba Fett seems to be really interested in this new way of defending himself.
Show me.
He doesn't have his tools anymore that he's relied on for his whole life, so he needs to find a new way to fight. And he takes this opportunity, being kind of a captive of these Tuscans, to train himself. Then the next adventure happens when a train appears in the distance and starts shooting at the Tuscan clan. Instinctively, Boba Fett helps protect some of them from the attack. That's interesting. Has he developed an attachment to these people? Is this not just about survival anymore? They survive the attack, but a lot of them die, and Fett seems to be angered by this. He tells the chief that he's gonna stop this deadly train. Then another surprising thing happens. He goes and kills the biker gang that everyone was afraid of earlier, and then steals their speeders. Now, I was convinced that he was just going to ditch, but he ends up bringing them back to the tribe and starts teaching them how to ride a speeder bike.
Like a panther.
Something about his experience has made him want to actually help these people. There's a neat shot here where the Tuscans are using their new skills to maintain the bikes while Boba trains with the teacher. Very simple story, told very efficiently. Even the little kids are watching him and playing around, and Boba Fett's doing really well. I take this training as representing Boba's desire to learn and grow. The Gaffy Master sees this and respects him for it. They're kind of developing a mute friendship. Basically, Boba Fett is actually liking this community. Then it's time for the train heist. A big ol' action scene, and the teacher even comes to help out, and they stop the train together. Turns out the train was carrying spice, which is the cocaine of Star Wars. But Boba Fett seems to have changed a little bit. Boba develops a righteous attitude and commands the spice traders to respect the lands of the tribe. And he spares their lives. Something is happening here to Boba. He's gained a new perspective on this particular group of people, and with nowhere else to turn to, he begins making a life for himself with them. Boba has always respected those who are strong survivors, and this trait is expanded upon through finding a connection with an entire community. And to punctuate this change, he's given a gross lizard that takes control of his body, and he goes through a legendary acid trip. This scene's nuts, and we finally get a look at why this is really happening to him through a whole bunch of cool metaphors and imagery. He starts seeing the waters of Camino where he was born. We get a flash of his armor. He walks to a tree and feels the branches closing around him like the Sarlacc pit, and flashes of his childhood watching his father go away to do bounty hunting. Okay, so what the hell's this? Boba Fett is faced with his past. He's realizing that he's been trapped in his armor, his father's shadow, his former profession, and cracks the branch keeping him prisoner there. It's really artfully done. For the first time in his life now, Boba Fett sees an opportunity to do something with his life other than be a bounty hunter. He doesn't have to be a killer for hire. After going through this spiritual ceremony, he's given new clothes and builds his very own gaffy stick with the tree branch that represented the shackle that they used to bind him. It's a cool little spiritual thing. It's like a little metaphor thing. I don't know, it seems pretty Star Wars. He is now formally a member of this tribe. This guy used to just be a solo bounty hunter, and now he's got a second family. I guess you could say that Boba Fett is a foundling. In episode 3, Boba gets a mission and travels as an ambassador to the Tuscan camp. He even pets his bantha like them. However, the guy who's been running the spice is a bit of an asshole and gives Boba another side quest. If you go kill the biker gang, then we'll respect your space. But tragically, the entire Tuscan tribe, Boba's new family, is slaughtered. Boba Fett's shot at turning a new leaf seems to be lost. He burns all the bodies and then holds a tiny little kid gaffy stick in his hands and says goodbye. So what's cool is that this experience has fundamentally changed Boba Fett. This is the starting point of his arc, the tragic backstory after the tragic backstory. He's been shown a new way that he could live his life, something that he may have never considered before or thought that he was incapable of having. While thinking about what he should do next, Boba sees a distress call. It's legendary actor Ming-Na Wen. He gets Thundercat to help fix her up, probably so that she would be in his debt and would help him out with whatever he wants to do next. Because he recognizes her. She's a well-known deadly assassin, much like he was. Now, at this point, with someone who actually knows who Boba Fett is, he looks completely transformed. It's a cool moment to have her be introduced to our Boba Fett in full Tuscan mode. They take this opportunity to have a really cool dramatic irony line.
I take it I'm worth more alive, huh?
You are.
It's not for the reason you'd think. So, why the hell does Boba Fett want to rule a crime organization? Boba explains his plans to Fennec.
I'm gonna kill that bloated pig who double-crossed me. Take his throne.
And then Fennec reacts exactly the same way I did when I found out this show was gonna happen.
You went ahead of Gatra.
Why not?
Oh! I guess he doesn't know either. So not even Boba Fett knows why he wants to do this. This character feels compelled to do something and he doesn't understand why quite yet. It makes his goal into a spiritual journey. His experiences have given him an irrational need for change. They took my only question about this show, why, and they made it the central narrative question. And as the audience, we're figuring out the answer as he does. And the rest of the show digs into this decision and what the character truly desires, now that he doesn't have to be who he was. In a way, I see this flashback structure as an attempt for Boba to understand himself, reflecting on what led him to this position as he struggles to achieve a need he doesn't fully understand. With the help of Fennec, they rescue his ship, but they can't find his armor anywhere. Even though he's a badass Tuscan now, he can't achieve his desire to build a house without using every weapon at his disposal. His decision to quit bounty hunting is further elaborated on.
I'm tired of our kind dying because of the idiocy of others.
His time with the Tuscan Raiders has given Boba a new perspective, an appreciation for the one thing contracted bounty hunters value least of all.
What's that?
Loyalty. You can only get so far without a tribe.
This is why Boba Fett is the way he is when he meets Din in The Mandalorian. Part 2, Boba Fett, the Mandalorian. So, Boba Fett goes to Mando and politely asks for his armor back, with his Tuscan garb and gaffy stick. He makes a deal with Mando so that Grogu's safety is guaranteed as long as the armor is given back to him. But they get attacked by stormtroopers. Boba is now trained with a gaffy stick, and whacking the stormtroopers with this thing is so much more satisfying to watch given all this context of his lost tribe. Like, oof, this guy is representing his fallen clan. The rage in his face as he uses it conveys his desire for avenging his lost second family. But then the armor is returned, and Boba shackles himself in something that once trapped him, now for his own purposes. Kinda like in God of War Remake when Kratos put the blades back on his arms. Boba was freed from his former identity so that he could look within and find out what he actually wants. And now that he has a purpose, he must don the armor again and attempt to reconcile his new calling with his dark past. This makes the armor, mean something. So Grogu gets kidnapped by edgy robots, and Boba Fett vows to return the child to Mando as per his word. Well, there you go. This Boba Fett makes so much more sense now. He's no longer a bounty hunter, but someone seeking a family. And when he comes across another found family, he sees the value of the connection and does whatever he can to protect it. It's not just about keeping his word like we thought. He's a changed man, and he desires to keep this child safe and protect this family. He even uses his own ship to house them. When Boba and Mando go to meet with the other Mandalorians, Bo-Katan says,
"Not all Mandalorians are bounty hunters."
This line is now doubly ironic, as neither of these guys are doing bounty hunting anymore. One of the Mandalorians chastises Boba for being a clone of Jango Fett, and this really pisses Boba off. It's an interesting flavor to this character that hasn't really been acknowledged until now. Boba Fett is indeed a clone of his father, but presumably Boba did love Jango Fett, and his reaction here being so violent supports this. He doesn't like to consider himself a clone. So yada yada, Luke Skywalker saves them all, but doesn't get to meet Boba Fett because that would be too tricky, and we're not really ready for that yet. Gotta focus on the key moment of that scene because we gotta have a teary goodbye, move on. So, Boba Fett, now with the armor, then busts into Jabba's palace and kills Bib Fortuna, sitting on the throne. And now we know why. This show completely recontextualizes Boba Fett's first appearance in these Star Wars shows. Back when these episodes first aired, I was confused why he was acting totally different, and it felt like he was just after the armor for some sort of Mandalorian pride, but he's not a bounty hunter anymore, and this was just a side quest. He wants the armor so he can start a family. What? That makes this Mandalorian episode way more interesting. Part 3, Boba Fett, the Daimyo. So at last, we are at everyone's least favorite part of the show. Yay! But since we've kept all this backstory and character development in mind, suddenly these scenes become much more interesting. So Boba Fett has decided to become the crime lord of Mos Espa, for reasons that he doesn't really even know for sure. But he's already having trouble. The mayor of Mos Espa straight up disrespects him and demands that Boba gives the mayor a tribute, not the other way around. Fennec, being a tough girl, is like, alright, I got this. We're crime bosses now. We just gotta kill him. But Boba Fett says no, instead just sending the mayor's ambassador away, causing political tension right out the gate. Then the Gamorrean guards, who were loyal to the previous daimyo, are presented as torture victims.
Their tortured squeals will send a piercing message.
But Boba Fett, again, says no, instead enlisting them as part of his guard. They go on their first patrol of the city, and Fennec says that he shouldn't be traveling on foot. He should be carried.
It's a sign of power to the people of Mos Espa.
For a third time, though, Boba Fett says no. Boba seems to want to be a very different kind of ruler than any before him, heavily influenced by his time with the Tuscan community. Boba Fett seems to be feeling out what he is wanting for himself, little by little. He respectfully meets with the casino ruler and gets his helmet cleaned. He just wants to be friendly. But under this demeanor he's projecting, the casino owner appears to passive-aggressively patronize him, while politely complying. Things immediately go south as they get attacked, and the public sees Boba Fett's impotence as a fearsome crime boss, getting nearly killed by just a small group of people. But this doesn't sway Boba Fett's methods. They capture one of the assassins, and again, Boba spares his life, instead using a tricky technique by faking him out with a rancor that isn't there in order to get information. These radically different methods of achieving what he wants are terribly ineffective in changing his public image, and no one is taking him seriously. In fact, the mayor attempts to give Boba a reward for returning the assassin, as if Boba Fett is still a bounty hunter. He ends up taking the payment though, but claims it's not a bounty.
I will take this payment as what you should have brought me as tribute.
But that's such a weak demand. I'll accept your terms, but they're actually my terms. Boba Fett's approach is just not working. The reason I love this is that in Boba Fett's desire to start a house and be a big shot crime boss, he's totally overcorrected himself. Sure, he's no longer just a killer, but all that he's doing now is speaking empty words. The reason that these scenes are less engaging than the rest of the story is because Boba Fett becomes incredibly passive in the narrative. He walks around shouting his name and making demands that no one really desires to fulfill in a meaningful way. But on a rewatch, we see a super interesting interesting character who's gone through a lot of change, taking a new, peaceful approach to achieving his goals, with a clear set of principles and conviction to not be like other rulers. I'm not like other daimyo. It's much more compelling that he's overcorrecting himself in a desire to change as a person, and that's where the conflicts of the story comes from. So far, this endeavor has been a huge failure, but in his commitment to the bit, being respectful and passive, he actually starts to make some progress in unexpected ways. He's given his first real problem to tackle as Daimyo. This group of homeless disabled teenagers is stealing water from someone in his territory, but when he goes to punish the thieves, he finds out that the water is just priced way too high and they don't have any jobs. He's confronted with something that's wrong in his community, and he punishes the person in power while rewarding the common people with jobs. In this particular scenario, the passive, softer approach garners him the kind of loyalty that he's looking for, not from the wealthy criminals of his crime empire, but the citizens of his land. And then he gets yet another assassination attempt, this time from Jabba's cousins sending a Wookiee gladiator. And my dude still won't retaliate or even execute the assassin. The Jabba cousins come back and they go, "Hey, we're sorry, have a rancor," as well as a warning that a different crime syndicate is coming to take over the city, so they're just peacing out. Boba Fett naturally has sympathy for bounty hunters, as he's shown with Fennec, so he lets the Wookiee go. Boba immediately takes great liking to the rancor. An interesting character trait here is that he likes animals, again probably coming from his time spent with the Tuscans. It's always a really reliable trick to make you like a main character. This is totally me every time I'm petting a dog.
Excuse me, Lord Fett.
Not now, I'm busy.
So this crime syndicate that's apparently taking over Tatooine is a huge threat to Boba's rule. One of the homeless disabled teenagers reports a bunch of soldiers arriving, and then this weird moment happens.
Keep an eye on them.
Sorry.
Don't have to be sorry, mate. I paid a lot for this.
Aw, Boba Fett's respectful approach to ruling is having an effect on the people working for him. They actually like him. The loyalty has a different flavor here, and sparing the Wookiee pays off because he needs some extra muscle. In response to the Syndicate's arrival, Boba meets with the other houses to ask them to be on his side in the coming conflict. He has a very altruistic view on how business should be conducted.
Why speak of conflict when cooperation can make us all rich?
He's envisioning a society with no backstabbing or betrayal. He's looking for genuine community. This explains what he meant when he said,
We're smarter than them.
He's developing an ideology for himself, one based on workers' merit and peaceful business conduct. It's really admirable. But obviously, this is Tatooine. Nobody wants to do this. So instead, Boba just asks that they don't take any sides while he fights the Syndicate. They say yes, but they're gonna betray him, obviously. The Pikes blow up the casino that Boba Fett kept visiting, and he feels genuine remorse that a bunch of innocent gambling addicts died on his watch. Again, like with the Tuscans, something is happening here. Something is keeping Boba here other than his initial ambitions. Mando, oh look, he's here now, says that the citizens of a nearby town are only going to help Fett if he will abolish the drug trade entirely. These two events make Boba Fett reassess what he wants for his position of power. And remarkably, he decides that instead of just replacing the old guy, he's gonna have to start acting like a leader, listening to the people and making decisions that make positive change, doing what's best for the citizens. He now has a real political goal here. Get rid of the drugs and make Mos Espa an honest city. But the teenagers then challenge him on it. Basically, Boba Fett's like, all right, we're gonna hold up in my castle and it's a better defensive position. But the teenagers argue that if he wants to protect the people, as he says, he needs to fight in the city where he can actually protect the innocent people. Boba Fett sees these people in need and says yes. Then the bounty hunter Cad Bane approaches, someone from Boba Fett's past. You don't really need to see the Clone Wars in order to get who this guy is or his relationship to Boba. All we get is an echo line of something that Fett has said before.
All of that isn't the Quacta calling the Stifling slimy.
If that's not the Quacta calling the Stifling slimy.
There's a connection between these two, a bounty hunter that emerges like a ghost of Boba's former career, his former life. Bane then tells him that this Pike Syndicate is actually responsible for massacring the Tuscan clan. This reveal allows Boba to focus and realize what he's actually dealing with here. A political debate on how the planet should be run, where he is steadfast against the old violent ways. He sees now that the old ways aren't just stupid, but evil, and he is charged with destroying it. Their plan for defending themselves immediately goes off the rails, and Boba Fett is left alone with Din. They have a quick chat about the possibility of escape, but Boba's motivation has now entirely shifted from power to protection. And with this newfound resolve, he sends out a negotiator with a formal declaration of his dedication to wiping the Syndicate out. And then the show goes blam blam. And I'm like, hell yeah. This episode is the equivalent of eating an entire bag of Cheetos in one go. I feel a little gross by the end, but I had a great time. Even in the fight though, Boba Fett's concern is entirely on protecting the town.
These two will destroy the whole city.
These giant droidicas come, and then Boba gets his Rancor and then destroys them before facing off with Cad Bane. Cad Bane then reiterates the central question of the show. My question from the very beginning.
What's your angle?
Boba Fett wanted power, but now he's fighting for the people. This question from the antagonist makes Boba acknowledge the change that's happened within him.
These are my people. I will not abandon them. This is my city.
Daimyo Boba Fett is dedicated to his noble goal and faces off against his past, his old life, the bounty hunter within. Bane taunts him with the truth, claiming that he can never truly change.
You've got your father's blood pumping through your veins. You're a killer.
This line harkens back to earlier when Boba took offense when being called just a clone. What's happening is a lovely reattribution of lore, what it means to be a clone. People from his past keep symbolically telling him that he's exactly like his father, doomed to the same fate. But Boba is proving to these people and to himself that he's not just Jango Fett's clone, but his son, and he can be better than his father. So this is all going through Boba Fett's mind as Cad Bane gives him one final lesson.
Look out for yourself. Anything else is weakness.
Living with the Tuscans has made you soft.
No. It's made me strong.
And with that, Boba utilizes his gaffy stick, the weapon of his second family, to defeat his past self.
I knew you were a killer.
This is true. But Boba Fett has unified both sides of himself here. He is and always will be a killer, but his loyalty to the people of his community is his true strength. He had overcorrected to passivity, which had resulted in a dire conflict. But in the time of need, he reignites the savage, efficient killer within for the benefit of his community. The bounty hunter is dead, but the warrior remains. And now that he's freed the people of Mos Espa, he's finally achieved the respect that he's been searching for this whole time. Achieved not just by being polite, but by being strong and fighting for their freedom. He's the town's hero. Boba Fett's a hero now. Even at the end of this though, he questions whether or not this is the right thing for him to do.
We are not suited for this.
Fennec, having fought with him on every pacifist move that he's made in trying to rule Mos Espa, can see now that no, you are the right person for this. This story is incredibly simple, but Boba Fett is now a real character. I'm really happy for him. So what do you do with Boba Fett? You change him. I get that some people are frustrated that they just turned him into a hero, but I appreciate that this character growth came directly from his past. This show takes his death seriously and treats it as a rebirth, and puts him in a position to define himself under the weight of his nature as a clone. I love when stories take pre-established lore and elaborate on how the character feels about said lore. And I just thought it was really interesting. That's the video, like and subscribe. Hey, here's all the Patreon names. Just to clarify, I don't care if it's good. I'm not talking about that. There's tons of critics out there. I'm not a critic. I just thought that it was interesting to unpack Boba Fett chronologically because it's a non-chronological show. If you have a problem with me saying nice things to a show, regardless of its quality, please email me at shutup.com.